Well, hello and welcome to the Mindset Mentor. I'm Tania Kolar, helping you live your best life. Do you ever feel like life doesn't quite feel like the one that your soul signed up for? Well, that's exactly how my guest on today's show felt and has completely changed her life. She decided to ditch the corporate career and the world and to pursue her passion. So we're going to talk about what that passion is because everybody has that deep soul purpose and passion, and we really want to help you get there. So it's so inspiring to listen to some great stories. My guest is the author of Angels, Herpes, and Psychedelics, and it's about unraveling the mind to unveil illusions. So interesting because we all live a life, an illusory life, sometimes trapped in a world that doesn't feel authentic and real. Well, we're going to get real, and I think that the title itself, right there in the book, tells you right away that you are in for a ride of reality and awakening. So let's say hello to my special guest today, Beth Bell, author, advisor, and entrepreneur. It's a pleasure to have you here on the Mindset Mentor today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So great. You know, your book title right away is very catchy, right? You're grabbing the reader's attention immediately. And I think that's so important because especially as your subtitle of the book, the Unraveling the Mind to Unveil Illusions, alludes to is the fact that we are all or many of us, let's say, are living an illusory life. And I'm looking forward to understanding for you how you made that realization that the life that you were living that from the outside world looked like this perfect life, all of a sudden revealed itself to be, well, hold on a second, this is not authentic. How did that happen, Beth?
Well, there's so many stories in the book that I talk about and how I started to realize like, maybe this isn't the road that I really want to be on. And yet I look back and reflect on every road that I was on was perfect, just as it was at that time. But then we get these juncture points where we can make a decision. And I like to encourage people to make a decision because if we don't, when our soul's nudging us and saying, hey, maybe you're not quite in the right spot or the right place or the right relationship, maybe there's something more. A lot of times people don't do it because of fear. And so I'm here to say, step through the fear and actually make that choice. And so a couple of the ones that I talk about right up front, so it's like 20 years of my life. So it's a pretty long span of my awakening journey.
Mm-hmm.
And in the beginning, I was married. I felt like I had the white picket fence and my knight in shining armor. And then I realized that, wait a second, I am not in the relationship that's going to help me catapult my soul in this lifetime to live my purpose. And so I ended up leaving that relationship after 10 years. And so that was one of my first really big jumps. I got married and I was going to stay married because that's what I was programmed to do, and where I grew up. And so, yeah, so that was one of my first big jumps, but there's several we can talk about. So, wherever you want to go with that, I can talk more about what that meant to me, or we can jump on to the next one or
Yeah,
whichever.
I'd love to delve into, a little bit more
Yeah.
what that actually meant to you because I think that, a lot of the listeners right now and anybody who's going to be watching the video can really relate to that. That sometimes things just either they don't feel right, sometimes for a very long time, or you start to get these nudges, as you say, and the realization that, wait a minute, there's something beyond the comfort zone, something beyond the life that is familiar and playing it safe. I think that a
Yeah.
lot of people are stuck in the fear of what could be versus how do I leave this because I want something different, but it's so comfortable and the fear immobilizes people. So I'd love to delve into a little bit more of that fear for you and what that felt like and what was the real sort of catalyst to break through that fear.
Yeah, I like that you want to delve into it because I think a lot of people are in comfortable relationships. And
Mm-hmm.
I certainly was in a comfortable relationship. We were great companions. We had a lot of similar interests. We had a life plan. And that life plan was a great one. And we were implementing it. And we were actually really successful at our life plan. But what
Mm-hmm.
happened for me is I had what I call the awakening kiss at 30,000 feet. And something I was completely not expecting. I am someone who is like completely against cheating on anyone in a relationship, even having thoughts about those things. And it just so happened that I had a real strong connection with someone and ended up having this awakening kiss that just lit my body up. And I was like, whoa, I cannot ignore that I have been telling myself a lie that I'm happy in this relationship. I knew what it was like to be more intimately, soulfully connected with someone. But in this relationship, I had really just convinced myself that because everything else felt so perfect or looked so perfect or sounded so perfect that it must be perfect. And I had convinced myself of that. And so this kiss just woke me up at a cellular level. It was just an energy transmission that I think the angels finally said, okay, if she's not going to get it, we're just going to hit her over the head. And that was really a catapulting event for me because I knew at that point that I couldn't unknow what I knew and that I had allowed myself to just sort of, I felt like my soul was kind of just being like squished into this box. And my marriage at the time was not great, but we were doing our best, and it was a situation where there was a little bit of controlling going on. And so there, I believe that we call everybody in our life for the lessons. So I certainly was no victim of any kind, but he really helped squish my soul in a way that when I finally went boom, I said, I have to take action. And I did. And I think a lot of people might have these situations and they don't actually take action for fear of not wanting to lose the plan. I had 10 years invested in this relationship, and yet I just knew at a soul level that I wasn't going to let the fear hold me back from leaving that. And that was really a catapulting moment for me. And I think it gave me a lot of bravery to make a lot of other decisions and big jumps as I went through my life.
Wow. That's so interesting. And, thank you for sharing that and being vulnerable and just putting it out there because I think that, again, so many people have been in that situation where they had a potential to, stray outside of a relationship, and clearly that was not part of your values, of doing that. But sometimes life does present the perfect people in the perfect scenarios to help you awaken to your reality and to the self and to the true self. And just to be clear, we're not saying that relationships are bad. Relationships are wonderful. You can be married for 50 years with that one person, and that's terrific. And I love that. That's beautiful. But there does come a point in your life, and whether that's through a relationship or other experiences in life, where you just start to realize that you've been just living the status quo and just almost like by rote, just, living life day to day. And then you sort of lose the fire and the passion. And, you had spoken, Beth, about that kiss at 30 feet that just made you go boom, right? And I think that moment of clarity that brings is such a beautiful gift. And so let's talk a little bit about, that gift for you, and how your life started to change incrementally from where you were to where you are today.
Yeah, well, and I think one other thing I want to add to that is that I talk a lot about soul contracts.
Mm-hmm.
And so relationships are key for, which is what you just said, for us to learn. So relationships are the reflectors that help us understand what our own pain bodies are and our own trigger points are. But sometimes that soul contract is up and there's not anything more to learn in that relationship. Mm-hmm. But we still, when we get out of these relationships, if we do, or we stay in the relationship, if the other person's willing to help and do the inner work to understand what is the pain bodies that we attracted each other for, what was the thing we came together to heal, we can stay together forever. A lot of times one person is less interested in doing that deeper inner work than the other. And that's where I think the tough decision comes to say, you know what? This soul contract got me as far as it was supposed to. Bless it, be grateful for it, heal from it, and then move into the next one, so that you're not just remarrying, right? The same programs, the same stories, the same wounds. And so that's, I think, also what really helped me catapult through is I really went into the deep inner work. I didn't just jump into other relationships. I wanted to understand more about this connection that I had with this person that I had the awakening kiss with, which I didn't actually explore a long-term relationship with that person. And I knew that they were a guardian angel for me. So that also helped to just really get me on my soul quickening path to understand that, oh gosh, we have connections, like soul connections with people, maybe even previous lives connections. All these topics today for me are are like very familiar, but back then they weren't. I wasn't thinking about, oh, did I have a previous life with someone, or is there something more here? So yeah, I think we can get a lot out of each relationship that we have. I happen to take a lot of my life lessons from romantic relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Other people get them from family relationships, illnesses, relationships at work, or their relationship to their own job. So yeah, so for me, I feel like I usually call them in through romance. I guess they're I find them to be the juiciest, and of course they hit the hardest and go the deepest, and give you great opportunities to heal all wounds.
Yeah, and that it really truly is all about healing, healing the inner self, healing the inner child, the wounded child. And we do sort of call in and draw in those people who can help us see with clarity. Now, some of those traumas that have been suppressed and stored and held onto in the body that really prevent us from living our best life. And when you can start to unravel that, it really is truly a game changer, and it allows you to move forward in a way that does feel authentic. It feels good. Like it's that you'll find that synchronicities happen, right? All of a sudden, out of nowhere, these synchronistic events happen and they just feel really good. And I think that's really key, that in life, if we can ask ourselves, in any situation, does this feel good? Is a good indicator on whether we're on the right path or we are maybe just playing it safe and staying in that comfort zone and are unwilling to look at, the possibilities that are available to us. And I think that you have been amazing, Beth, at looking at the possibilities and like what's next and what could happen if I now take this action and I take this particular
Yeah.
step. And I think that's one of the things that so many people, that's where they get trapped up or tripped up, where they think, oh, well, I don't know what that looks like, so I'm not even going to go there. Or the belief that it's not possible for me to
Yeah.
excel or to have something different that feels better, that you just shut yourself out completely from
Yeah.
that. So did you find that you ever had that sort of challenge come up where it was that reminder, like, wait a minute, do you really want to move forward, or let's hold on for dear life back to that lower level, right?
Yeah, well, I think you bring up a good point, and that was when you talked about feeling, how do I feel about something? And I think sometimes we get confused, and this is something that I really learned as I continue to unravel my mind, but
Mm-hmm.
that we start to learn how to numb ourselves, so we actually don't know how to feel about something
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes. And what happens when we start to get rid of the mind, as is then we can actually feel. We talk about a gut feeling, right? Something that's like more visceral in our body. And a lot of us got rewarded. I got rewarded for being a brilliant mind. I got
Mm-hmm.
rewarded for thinking. I got rewarded for, what do you think about that? As opposed to, what do you feel about that? And we store everything in our body, all of our traumas, but
Mm-hmm.
also all the juicy stuff. And so it is about getting deeper into the body. Now, you asked me a question about that I think I kind of digressed, but I wanted to just touch on that, because I find that a lot of, and I know all your viewers are the ones that are the brilliant ones, the ones that are thinking and that have relied on their thinking mind
Mm-hmm.
to get them to where they are in their life, because that's how in our societal constructs the norm is that we get rewarded. Well, I will say that living in Bali got me into a whole different mindset, because living in Bali, I started to understand that this if then thinking is very Western. It's a good thing. But if we rely only on if then, if I do this, then, right? And my
Yeah.
corporate background was all about scenario planning, strategic planning, options, and it's all from the mind, like totally different programming system than what the Balinese have. The Balinese have innately, how do I feel about that? They
Mm-hmm.
make decisions on how they feel. And because they don't have all this headspace and all these programs and all these ideas and all these, yeah, dreams and expectations, they can just live in this really incredible blissful space and of now and in presence. And that's something that I just feel incredibly grateful that I was able to immerse myself in, living in Bali for 5.5 years. I was in Asia for 7, but Bali 5.5. And that was just an opportunity to just be back into community and be back into feeling. And when we were, saying hi to someone, we actually made eye contact with someone. When we hugged someone, we actually hugged them. It wasn't just one of those, oh, hi, and a hug. And so that connection part, I think, is what we're also missing so
Mm.
much today, that helps us get out of the numbness and into our inner wisdom, because everything's within. And yet somehow, somewhere, we all got programmed to look outside of ourselves to define what success is, to, define who we are, to define, elements of all these aspects that we can be, but it's not who we really, really are at the core. And once we start, as you said, breaking through these beliefs, then we get into tapping into that inner wisdom, that place where all the answers reside. And so for me, I continue on my journey. I feel like the next step you take in your expansion in consciousness, then you get another big thing that comes, and like, okay, let's see if you can transcend this, like, okay, good job, grasshopper, you did that good, but now we're going to give you something more. And so, and the fun thing is that you can't ever unknow what you know when it comes to consciousness, and when it comes to, once you realize that something was just a belief that's actually not true, you can't unknow that. It's like, oh gosh, I didn't even realize I had that program. I didn't even realize I was associating that belief with my current reality. And there are things oftentimes that hold us back. Sometimes they're the beliefs that, that catapult us forward, but it's always filtering through and figuring out, well, which one is it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so true.
Yeah.
It's really lifting the veil, right? And
Yes.
and now, exposing, that real true core. And then you can make
Yes.
decisions that really, now all of a sudden flow naturally, as opposed to the resistance
Yes.
that we find in life. When we keep hitting that resistance, again, that's a really good indicator that we're not living our best life and our most authentic life, when we were constantly met with resistance in all aspects. So it's usually, in transfers over to every area of our lives.
Yes.
It doesn't just stay in one spot.
No.
Yeah. So, great conversation. And we're going to take a break, and we're going to continue the conversation here on the Mindset Mentor. I'm Tania Kolar. My special guest today is Beth Bell. She is the author of Angels, Herpes, and Psychedelics, and it's Unraveling the Mind to Unveil Illusions. And it's so interesting that, we go through life really oblivious to most of the illusions that are at play. And this is really about starting to unveil the truth, coming to the core. So stay tuned, and we're going to get to the core. Welcome back to the Mindset Mentor. I'm Tania Kolar. This is your mindset workout for today. And remember that your mindset is like a muscle that needs to be strengthened and conditioned. Now, one thing I want to talk about that my special guest today, Beth Bell, joining us. She's an author, advisor, and entrepreneur, author of Angels, Herpes, and Psychedelics, by the way, which is what we're really delving into in this hour. I wanted to talk about the impetus for your book obviously was, you had this great awakening, right? And a part of that awakening had to do with shutting out that mind, the thinking mind. And I think that's so key because, I'm all about mindset, but I think we can overanalyze things. And when we overanalyze, that can lead to a lot of roadblocks in life, right? Paralysis or, not wanting to make the wrong decisions, or analyzing every detail of the decisions that you made can lead to a lot of issues in life. So you went on a journey to find yourself, unexpectedly finding yourself, and then you traveled. You ended up in Asia. You spent some time in Asia. You spent some time in Bali. So I'd love to talk about, how did you get there? What led you there?
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you say a journey to find yourself, because I actually thought I knew myself. I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, I know what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
I prepared myself for this. And then, of course, Spirit has like all these other things that they're ready to say, hey, well, if you think that you're so confident about knowing yourself, we're going to give you some more. And so
Mm-hmm.
I lived in Singapore actually first in my corporate life. And I was a regional director for women's health, and I covered China, Japan, all the way to Australia, New Zealand. So I had this incredible job. I really enjoyed what I did, but I just still had this feeling that there was something more that I'm here to do in the world. And so I took a jump at a point where, yeah, I thought, I know what I'm doing and I'm confident. I'm not looking to find myself. Ended up moving to India with a gentleman that I was engaged to, and realized that I was sleeping with the devil. And so that's a whole story in and of itself, and escaped from India. And then I was looking to find myself because that was a pretty big jolt. That was like,
Wow.
I really felt like I was like at the the height of my intuition, and like, oh, I know how this universe works. I mean, not that I wasn't overly cocky about it, but I was like, I really thought like I had done the work because I'd been deep diving for many years prior.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, so once I realized that was going to be something that I had to heal, this whole, sleeping with the devil in India. I ended up back in Singapore for a little while, and then I went to Bali. I thought, I'd been to Bali before, and I thought, I'll go to Bali, heal in the light. It's a beautiful place, and
Mm-hmm.
thought I would stay 3 months, and stayed 5.5 years. So what did I do for 5.5 years? Well, I had started to create some products in Bali a couple of years prior, and didn't really get that business off the ground because I was working a full-time corporate job, but had a lot of fun making some products. So when I went to Bali, I thought, you know what, I'm going to start my jewelry line. And so I did. I started making jewelry, and still thought, I'll be here for a few months. I'll come back to the United States. And that was, I continued to make plans all along the way, but my soul had other plans. So, the other plan is that I ended up opening a brick and mortar shop on Monkey Forest Road in Ubud, Bali. So I designed all these products. I had no like dream of being a retail store owner. That was just not even on my radar. But a series of synchronicities happened, and then I was just clear that this is what I needed to do. So I did that. Had a shop for several years, and was an entrepreneur in Bali, and still have all of my products that I sell online now. And so I tell a lot of stories about what I learned about the culture in Bali, and my experiences in Bali. So I want to go back to the one thing about, I went there to heal, right? And I went there because, oh, I can live in the light. Oh, after sleeping with the devil, this will be great. Well, spirit had a whole nother plan, and I learned everything about black magic, and I learned everything about energy, and I learned everything about everything I thought I didn't want to know, right? I didn't want to deal with those other realms. I always had it in the back of my mind, like, yeah, I just don't really need to deal with the darker realms. And I'm a light worker, and I live in the light, and I've done the work, and all of that. And I learned so much about energy there. So the chapters talking about Bali really get in depth about that. But also, I had an incredible opportunity, even though I was working, had a company there and a shop and everything. I took the time to do a lot of the spiritual healing modalities. So I feel like it was sort of like the Disney world of, spiritual healing, and so many things came through for me, opportunities to learn about myself and unravel my mind, but also to learn more about other realms and things that, I would have judged years prior, sitting in my corporate life thinking, what are you talking about? Like other realms, so there was really a fascinating time in my life. And I feel really grateful for that opportunity to be able to incorporate my business and my spirituality in a place that was just so incredibly beautiful, but also
Mm-hmm.
had some deep lessons for me to learn as well.
Yeah, I think our environment is definitely can be conducive to bringing out the best, So I think that's kind of important. And sometimes you do need to remove yourself from a current space, get to somewhere else, and doesn't have to be miles away. But just in order to see things in a different light, or to feel things in a different way, it brings that clarity that sometimes we just don't have. We can be very
Yeah.
oblivious to our own limitations and our beliefs until you actually remove yourself yourself from an environment. And then now it's like, oh, I can actually see that, oh, this is how I've been operating and this is what I have been doing up until this point. But what I really love about your story is that you were open to the possibility of what presented itself. Right? In life, we're always presented with experiences and opportunities, and they're just right there. But sometimes we shut them out because we're not willing to, change the beliefs that we have and the opinions that we have. And you talked about, you didn't think that that was something that you want to explore, the dark side or, some of the spiritual stuff that you experience. And just to open yourself up to that, you were able now to take your life into a completely different direction that feels right. Again, we come back to that feeling space, which I think dictates the quality of our life. And it's a really good indicator. Do we want more of this or do we need less of something, right?
Yeah.
In order to move forward. So I think that clarity that you had is very inspiring for others listening to say, okay, let me just maybe open my mind, even just a little bit, open your mind to the possibilities, even just a little bit today can really be transformative down the road. And it transforms your life in that moment, like in that present moment, which is so key that most of us are oblivious to, because we have the externals that we're dealing with. And again, you had mentioned earlier that sometimes what we seek is the external, always looking to the external to change our lives. But it's really going deep within, and you've taken that deep dive and, made a journey to also leave a situation, and you called that sleeping with the devil. I'd love to delve into that a little bit more because that sounds intriguing. And what was that experience, and how did you know that you were sleeping with the devil?
Yeah. Well, I ended up meeting a gentleman in Singapore, and it was sort of a brilliant, situation that the universe put me in.
Mm.
One of which, when I met this person, I knew instantly that he was full of it. It was
Mm.
like my intuition, my feeling told me one thing, and yet I decided, I guess, my soul decided to explore this relationship. And I quickly fell into the illusions that he was creating about the relationship and about who he was.
Mm.
And so we, fell madly in love. And everything moved quickly. But what I realized once I had left my corporate life, moved to India, and I look, there was a lot of warning signs all along the way, but love is blind. And
Mm.
he just happened to have a real good handle on how to take advantage of love being blind. And so
Mm.
he had a whole agenda behind the mask that I was not attuned to, because I had sort of fallen into this whole illusion about the future we were creating, and thinking that he was all about healing humanity, and was on a similar trajectory that I was, about pollinating the planet with love. And
Mm.
so I got to India, and I realized quite quickly that I was in a very bad situation. And unfortunately, yeah, there was a lot of things that happened that I just didn't want to see.
Mm.
Um, Prior, with the idea of the romantic love illusion, and thinking that we really, I did not use the depths of my intuition. I did not, believe in my body's feelings greater than my mind, and what we were building together. So after 3 months, I escaped, and actually it's where the herpes story comes in, and I don't want to spoil it for readers, so I
Mm.
don't want to give all the details, but it came to a place where I knew that I had to get out. I had to get away from this individual, and that they were actually, I had gone back to Singapore, and I sat with a friend, and I just said, I don't know what's happening to me, but I am just so scrambled. I
Mm.
just feel so scrambled in this situation. I'm a smart woman. I'm an intuitive woman, but I can't seem to figure out what's going on here. And she looked at me, and we were sitting in a restaurant, and she looked at me and she said, Beth, you're being psychically attacked. And I'm like, oh my God, like, what does that mean? At the time I had no idea.
Mhm.
And it felt like the entire restaurant stood still as I sat there thinking, oh gosh, what did I get myself into? And the good news of it is I learned a lot about ethereal life cords. I learned about energy hacking. I learned about, things that I just wasn't aware of. I wasn't thinking about protecting my energy. I wasn't thinking about other people sucking on my energy. I wasn't thinking of these things, which happens to all of us all the time in different, in different ways. It might be a child that's sucking your energy. You might be sucking your child's energy, or, on their life cord. And so it's getting ourselves back to an equal exchange of giving and receiving. But yeah, so I realized that I was in a very somewhat dangerous situation, if you will, as certainly emotionally. And so I was able to escape. And then there's some juicy tidbits about what happens after that. But yeah, that was a jolt I was not expecting. I always said I would never leave a man for, I would never leave my job for a man. And I did that. And yet I look back and I go, it was the universe's way of getting me to jump out of something that was really great in many ways. But he got me to jump out, and yes, it was brutal, and yes, I ended up sort of falling into Bali as a result of that, but I probably would have never done any of that if I hadn't taken that tumble. And all of the things that I learned from that tumble were so critical to what I needed to know for my real life path. So I think one of the messages in the book that I hope comes across for everyone is to see how everybody is an angel in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, he felt like the devil, and in many ways is and was, but everybody's an angel because they're here to teach you something.
Yeah, I agree. I think that in our greatest challenges in life, the ones that really, knock us out completely, are our greatest blessings. And there's such a beautiful gift and a reward there. And we just gotta, mine the lesson, mine the gift, find that, and move forward in a way that's empowering, because it's always, sort of peeling back the layers of, what's going on in the body, in the mind, so that we can get back to the soul, to the core truth, and so that things again can flow. We can live in the natural algorithm of life and without that resistance. So I love that you had said earlier that you were, your purpose, I believe you say, is pollinating the planet with love. And I think that that sort of obviously is a great purpose and it's a great mission. And you also are known as the flower whisperer. Is that what it is? So tell
Yeah.
us a little bit more about that, and why you want to pollinate the planet with love.
Yeah, well, I was in my corporate life and I knew that I needed to meditate, but I could not meditate. I would sit for 15 minutes and I'd be like, I cannot get that time back. And so it was super frustrating. Ended up in Hawaii with a new camera that took really great up close pictures. So I started photographing flowers. Before that, I photographed architecture and some landscape things, but I hadn't done anything with flowers. And I just was mesmerized by these flowers. I'd gone to Hawaii
Mm.
and orchids and just seeing this. Oh, it was just incredible. So I just continued to photograph and photograph and photograph. And then what I realized was it was the universe's sneaky way of getting me to meditate, because I was actually, through observational photography, I was actually meditating because I was
Mm-hmm.
quieting my mind. And so over time I started to get what I call downloads, while I was photographing these flowers. And I felt like the flowers were speaking to me. Okay, before anyone thinks that I'm off my rocker, it's really just that my ego mind had quieted enough so that I could hear my higher self. And so it felt like they're messages from the flowers. And there is a vibration with flowers, and you can get messages from flowers, but it's really allowing you that opportunity to connect into your higher self, which is what meditation does. It helps you quiet the mind so that you can be in your fullness and your wholeness, and hear your own inner wisdom. So that's how that started. And then I started to realize, over time, when I moved to Bali, I started to get the real power of Mother Nature and what Mother Nature's offering and the connection that it provides us to source energy. So I like to call the flowers my divine portal. And they were also very instrumental when it comes to psychedelics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which I definitely want to get into the psychedelics part of this all as well. So fascinating. We're going to take a break and we're going to continue the conversation here on Sauga 960. I'm Tania Kolar. You're listening to The Mindset Mentor. More with Beth Bell, author of Angels, Herpes, and Psychedelics, when we come back after this break. And welcome back to the Mindset Mentor. I hope you're having a fabulous day. Well, and if it's not fabulous, stay with us. We're going to help to make it fabulous. Remember that every moment is a choice. So let's choose to really fulfill, this moment in a way that serves us. So we're going to continue the conversation here with my special guest, Beth Bell, who is the author of Angels, Herpes, and Psychedelics. And it's Unraveling the Mind to Unveil Illusions. So we've been talking about some illusions that Beth has experienced. So we're going to jump right back into the conversation, Beth, and continue. And so let's go to psychedelics, because this is a fascinating topic right now in the world, and it actually has been a really instrumental way of helping people unveil the illusions of life and actually to heal trauma. And it's interesting how it's much more widespread now, where people are into trying it, using it, and at one point even people who would never have even thought of touching it are now thinking of it in a different way, and certainly again more from the healing perspective. So I'd love to talk about your journey with psychedelics and what that looked like.
Yeah, I would love to talk about it too. I have to say that I was always a super anti-drug person, not
Mm-hmm.
even marijuana. I mean, the occasional use of alcohol, of course, but not if drugs came out, I was gone. So
Mm-hmm.
it was just always a no-go for me. How it came about for me was, as we talked about me being a flower whisperer, my connection to Mother Nature. So that was an important backdrop to this story.
Mm-hmm.
A friend of mine was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she did an MDMA journey, and it changed the trajectory of her treatment altogether. And so she said to me, Beth, maybe you should try this. And I said, I've just done 20 years of deep diving into my spiritual, work. I don't want to undo anything that I've done or learned, and I don't want to lose my mind. So I'm like, yeah, no, thank you, but I don't think so. So that was my first thing. So then she came with the San Pedro. Well, there's an opportunity for San Pedro. Yeah, no. Well, I had also interviewed for a show that I was doing, Pollinating Planet with Love, Louis Schwartzberg, who's a famous time-lapsed cinematographer. He does all the flowers unfolding, and he did fantastic fungi. And so I was interviewing him, and I wanted to talk all about flowers, and he wanted to talk all about mushrooms, and then we both talked about that and ayahuasca and San Pedro. So he said, Beth, if you have an opportunity in the right set and setting, I think you should try it. So I said, okay, note to self. Well, I said no to that San Pedro, but then I just happened to be editing that episode at the time. And I thought to myself, I know the power of flowers. I
Mm-hmm.
understand the power of plant medicine. I understand, Mother Nature. Why would I be worried about a little cactus? What is right? So I went into a San Pedro ceremony, had an incredible experience. Learned so much, and I describe the details of that in the book. I would say that it just really helped me see the mind from a different perspective. We read about it, we talk about it. I've been a Course in Miracles student. We've talked
Mm-hmm.
about duality. We've talked all about it. I got it. Intellectually, I got it. But when you embody it and when you know it at a different level, and I'm not saying for everyone that like one journey on San Pedro is going to do all this for you. I'm not saying that.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's at a different place of where they're coming into a journey, but it does peel back some of those layers that gives you more insights to what it is that's in those programs that are deeply embedded in your subconscious mind. And it also can give you great insights into what and how the universe works and what your bigger plan is here. So it's basically, there's different, and then I went on to do some others like Bufo, and it's basically allowing your default mode network to be shut down so that your higher self can speak. Your higher self is always speaking to you, but we're so wound up in our minds and our programs and our external environment and what it's reflecting to us that we're not in the inward space and place. That's why everybody says, oh, go inward. And everybody goes, well, what do you mean? Because it's like, it's a nice thing to say and it's a nice idea. And there's meditation, but there's also connection to source and embodiment of source and bringing that embodiment back into our body and then shining that light out and existing here without the programs. Some of the programs are good, so I'm not saying we need to, completely lose our minds, but it's nice when you do. It's nice when you actually have the opportunity to lose your mind, legitimately lose your mind, for moments or for a couple of hours or whatever the session is. You still know who you are. You're still going to, be Beth Bell. You're still going to be the person that but you're just going to start to see how the storylines were woven together. And that's the beauty of it. So when I went to do the Bufo, which, are you familiar at all with Bufo?
No, I don't know Bufo. Mm-mm.
A lot of people don't. It's again, I went from San Pedro to, I wasn't expecting to do this Bufo ceremony, but ended up in a really safe setting. And also, the other message that I have for anyone considering psychedelics is the server. So you want to make sure that you're with someone that's safe and also
Mm-hmm.
someone that has similar intentions. Because for me, psychedelics are about expanding consciousness, they're about unraveling the mind, they're about seeing things from a higher perspective, but most importantly, bringing it back here in this dimension right now. And there are some servers and some people who get really caught up in the journey, going out there, shooting themselves out there, and then coming back here. But it's really about the integration work. And without the integration work,
Mm-hmm.
then sometimes people want to go back out there. And then, as far as I'm concerned, you're just doing drugs. So I'm not referring to the use of psychedelics in that way, where you're escaping something. I'm referring to the use of psychedelics. And most psychedelics are not addictive. Like, what you experience oftentimes is pretty deep. And so you're not like, yeah, let's go right back for that again. But it's the integration work that is so important. So
Mm.
when I got to the Bufo, which is venom from a toad's back
Oh
that's
dear. Mm-hmm.
crystallized, put into a pipe, and you smoke it. Okay, so like I'm sitting there going, I can't believe I'm involved in this, but I knew that my soul was saying, yes, this is for you. And so it's also become a little bit trendy, and I don't like to hear about any medicines becoming trendy, because without doing the deeper inner work, you're not bringing it back here. So you get shown a lot. But that was I've had so many incredible, not that I've had a lot of journeys, but
Mm-hmm.
I feel like most of them have been just incredible journeys. This one in particular, I had a complete 100% ego dissolution, which means that my mind was 100% gone, my body was 100% gone, and I was 100% in the bliss of divine oneness. And that is not something that anyone could explain.
Mm-hmm.
It's something to be felt. And as a result of that, it gave me the North Star to hit. I finally knew. I embodied what it felt like to do all of these things that the ascended masters talk about, the Jesus, the Krishnas, the Buddhas. Yeah, so I know I just gave you a really long answer, and you probably have a bunch of different things that you want to jump in on. So I'll hush for a moment and see what comes up for you.
No, I think that's fascinating, so interesting. And having that, divine bliss feeling, certainly you just want to replicate that all the time when you've had that experience. A lot of the psychedelics, you talked about, having what did you call them? Not a sitter,
Server.
a server, yeah. And it's kind of interesting because there's so many places now that are using psychedelics as therapy, as part of therapy. So
Yeah.
you'd have the professionals there with you so that you are able to integrate that and to understand how to integrate that into your day-to-day living, and also to help you process what is coming up, whether that's the MDMA route, or psilocybin or ayahuasca or the Bufo that I'm just learning about today. I've never heard of that, but quite fascinating. And it's interesting because, a lot of these psychedelics go, way back in terms of the history,
Yeah.
with plant medicines and, how they've been used. And they're just they're getting much more awareness now, and people are now open to the possibility, and even maybe just learning about it. And it's not certainly for everyone. I think you have to be open to the experience, because otherwise it's just, I think, could go go, dark for somebody. And I think that it's such a transformative experience. I know several people who have done, ayahuasca, the ayahuasca ceremonies and the psilocybin, and have really had, major life changes. And oftentimes, again, it's that clarity. It's unveiling
Yes.
the illusions of life and the traumas that we've experienced that we hold on to. Or even it's just sometimes it's the awareness of the reality now of the trauma and looking back at
Yeah.
it with eyes of an adult versus how we experienced it at the time that can be the game changer, right? It's just now being able to process it in a different way. And I think that, that is so healing for so many people. And now I've never tried the psychedelics, but I was like you, where, absolutely against drugs.
Yeah.
But I'm fascinated by ayahuasca, and the different modalities that they have now for healing, because I think that from the research that I've done, and some of the documentaries that I've seen on the psychedelics, it's amazing to hear firsthand from the people who have gone through it, now yourself included, to hear how it's really benefited their life moving forward. To me, like, that's fascinating, because I think every opportunity is a moment for growth and change and transformation. And if that's what shows up, and if that's the path that you take, if that feels right to you, because again, it's not right for everyone, then I say fantastic, explore it and see.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, a couple of things. This is the Bufo toad right here.
Okay, so this is right on the cover of Beth's book, which is Angels, Herpes, and Psychedelics.
Yeah. And when you were speaking, a couple of
Yeah.
things were coming forward and this might be triggering for people, but there's a lot of artwork that shows Jesus, the Jesus we know, the Christian Jesus we know, with psilocybin mushrooms. So these have been around as awakening agents for a long time. In fact, and I'm not claiming that he did mushrooms, but
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't doubt that he did mushrooms. And we see that also the apes, that might have been one of their evolutionary things that helped them with their consciousness. Now, again, I'm just saying that's something that I've seen. I wouldn't be surprised, but mushrooms have been around forever. A lot of these medicines have been around forever. I was just at a consciousness conference with scientists, the Greg Bradens, the Bruce Liptons,
Mm-hmm.
the
Oh, I
researchers
love.
who,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, they understand that there are plants that were given to us to help us heal. Just like we are accepting of some homeopathic things, we take certain herbs and different things for healing. So, it's sort of like, so why is this such a stretch? I also used to have a judgment around, I'll only do plant-based medicines that are psychedelics. I won't
Mm-hmm.
do anything that's manufactured in a lab. And then I got over that and I said, no, you know what? Everything is God. And these scientists were downloaded with this information in these labs to create these molecules to help us expand our consciousness, to help us awaken, to help us expand. Now, I think it's important that there's certain, I'm not saying like everyone should take drugs in any way. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying because psychedelics are very different than some of the other drugs that are working on different receptors. Psychedelics are very much focused on receptors that are not addictive. But you can make anything addictive. You can make Krispy Kremes addictive if you let your mind get into the loop of wanting to experience that and not do it for yourself, which leads me to say that I really encourage people to do the spiritual work.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have a spiritual foundation, it's a lot harder because you don't have a bridge. And I'm not saying to not do them if you don't have a spiritual background, but I'm saying get one. Get a spiritual practice. Have a spiritual guide. Have an integration coach. It's not something to just go get mushrooms and then sit by yourself and then go out into the ethers and try to
Yeah.
figure it
Yeah.
because
That could be dangerous. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
well, it's just that you want to maximize what you're going to get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
why not bring
Mm-hmm.
as much as you can back here so that you can not just unveil and unravel things, but keep them unraveled and allow yourself to be in a blissful state here planet Earth.
Yes, we want to, again, flow with the natural algorithm of life and to truly live our best life. And unfortunately, we are out of time. So,
Oh.
yeah, I mean, what a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you, Beth. And can you just let everybody know how they can get your book?
Yeah, they can get the book on Amazon. They can go to bethbell.me. I also have an Awakening and Healing Handbook on bethbell.me and a membership that you can come in and get more insights on the book club. And so there's lots of fun stuff on bethbell.me.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being vulnerable and opening up and just being raw and real and throwing it all into your book to inspire and help others. Well, again, that's a wrap for today's show. So remember to continue to live your best life. Stay tuned for more here on Sauga 960.